You've just stepped into the Buzzy's Country Store podcast, part-time porch talk, part-time therapy session, and all heart. I'm Chief Larry, and along with your host, J Scott Ridgell, we're serving up real stories with a Buzzy's twist.
Hello, welcome to the Buzzy Podcast. I'm J Scott. This is Larry, who's organizing and doing all the heavy lifting. This is our first. We have a live audience today. Brian Barnhill, Keith Raley, Joe Stone, Gary Gilride. I'm very honored you guys came down, but I'm even more honored that my guest here, Tim Reid, all the way from Annapolis.
I'm in Annapolis at the moment. Thank you so much. It's a great honor and pleasure. It was so fun running into you. And
Well, that was Sunday.
On Sunday.
And when you came in, I went, this guy ain't going to buy anything. He's just in here to look around. And you got a hat, and you got a shirt. And then we got talking, and next thing I know, Larry's invited you to be on our podcast to talk baseball. And I went, well, I got some baseball friends. That would be great.
Yeah, isn't that something? Because I loved your hats here, and I said I bought a hat, and I mentioned I like to buy baseball hats. And then we kind of realized that we both loved baseball.
That's true. Now, speaking of that, when did you, as a kid, what kind of got you? Did you play Little League? How'd you get into being a sports baseball junkie like you are?
I did play Little League, and I forget what it was called before Little League, but whatever that was called then. And I played in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
And I was really fortunate. I grew up in an area with a lot of good ball players, and my dad coached some of them. Rico Petrocelli, and the Tories were there, Koufax. So that part of Brooklyn was a hub. It's not anymore, but in those days, it was a big place for baseball. And all of my family, uncles, grandparents and stuff, they were Dodger fans. I was born in '54, so I really never got to see the Dodgers. I never made it to Ebbets Field even, but I grew up hearing about the Dodgers.
When they go?
57, basically. 57. They left, yeah. And so, but I would be inundated with Yankee hate. All that age group above me, they hated the Yankees, except for Babe Ruth. Right? Babe Ruth transcended that because of the way this is to answer your question, why I became a Babe Ruth fan, really, as much as a baseball fan. Babe Ruth appealed to people, I noticed even at a very young age, because he was one of the quote little guys. And at that time, that was when he epitomized the rising of that class of people. Before that was the Gilded Age and all the big,
right.
All the trust and whatnot that were, basically everybody was subservient, But so they loved Ruth, but they hated the Yankees. But my generation, even in Brooklyn, because it was before the Mets, they loved the Yankees, like the kids my age, We loved the Yankees because of Mickey Mantle,
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Whitey Ford and Yogi was just
Bill
like a
Scour
character. We drink you.
I hated all of them. Go ahead.
Yeah, like that. But
I can name their names.
Well, thank God for the Orioles because they gave us Babe Ruth. Yeah, but So I had that mixed bag of. But then I moved when I was 9 to Florida. I played a lot of ball there. Merritt Island, Florida.
Well, then, when did you make the transition into historian? As far as, was that later? And like baseball kind of hooks you young, and then it kind of keeps its hooks in you.
Right. Well, I never. I didn't get into baseball history until later. I was always into history. Right. I mean, I loved history in school, but I never thought of that was a genre of history that people studied. Although, everybody had their baseball cards and whatnot. I don't think we thought of that as history. But my cousin Bobby, who I still work with a lot on Babe Ruth projects, he was an expert at Stratomatic. Remember Stratomatic, the game where he'd spin, and he knew everything. He could tell you Nap Lajoie's, batting average in 1916, and how many points he was different than Cobb and Honus Wagner. It was like incredible, Bobby. So I got exposed to that in that way, but mostly I just like to play ball. But Bobby and I became rodmen on a surveying team for the city of St. Petersburg one summer. And we learned from St. Petersburg was the hub of spring training.
Right.
And I know one of the other fellows here knows that Fort Myers was a big hub too. That's where Connie Mack was with the A's. But Ruth is the one who brought spring training to Florida.
Where the Yankees train?
They trained in St. Petersburg.
Okay.
From 1925 to 1961, they were in St. Petersburg. Legendary, all the great super teams, Not that there weren't some really good ones in the 90s and 70s, kind of, but those are the famous names. I mean, you had Ruth, the most famous names. You had Ruth, Garrick, DiMaggio, and the Mantle, and then everybody around them all trained there in St. Pete. So I grew up. I would spend my summers every summer in St. Pete. And then when I became a surveyor, I would hear the stories from the old surveyors. And these guys were very precise with distances, obviously. But our facility where we had to leave every morning on our survey trucks would go right by what's called Al Lang Field and a hotel across the street called West Coast Inn. And we would hear the stories about exactly where Mantle hit, exactly where Musial hit, and then the big one, the super big one, the time Babe Ruth hit the West Coast Inn home run. And in his last few months of living, he talked about that as one of his greatest memories, and it was recorded by Red Smith, for instance, in Red Smith's definitive book. But that got lost in history. But me and Bobby knew that history, and then when the internet, right, exploded, right?
Yeah.
People could share their stories that were lost in time. And so ultimately, my story got back to the Babe Ruth of Babe Ruth historians, a man named Bill Jenkinson.
He's in the video, right?
He's in the video you saw. First Boys of Spring.
Yes.
But he's the definitive expert on Babe Ruth's career, and so I started working with him a lot, and I still do. And then he was close with the Ruth family, and now I got close with the Ruth family.
You know the granddaughter? Or
I know the granddaughter. I worked with her for several years, but mostly I work now with the grandson, who's from the second wife, and the great grandson, Tom Stevens and Brent Stevens, and they're great. I mean, they all three of them. They go all over the country, hosting events and stuff, and so I set up events here and there for them, and I attend other events. Like, for instance, I was at the 50th anniversary of the Babe Ruth Museum last year. That's the pin I got on here.
all right.
And I was just with them last week in Baltimore.
Now, where are they?
Well, Tom is in South Carolina.
Right.
And he just moved there from Las Vegas last year. And but they spend all their year, and Brent is in Atlanta. But they all grew up in Concord, New Hampshire, or Conway, New Hampshire. And I was just up there a couple months ago for the first time. And in fact, I worked a couple times, and I got the honor of meeting Babe Ruth's daughter,
Wow.
who lived 103, right? So that was Julia. She was wonderful, sharp as a whip. I mean, right.
How many kids did he have?
Well, he adopted two kids.
We know about.
Right, that we know about. And oddly enough, it's probably true that he only had two, because there was only one notable paternity suit filed against him, and that was indisputably disproved. So that's kind of a surprise.
Indisputably, did they do the DNA?
Blood test back then, and that kind of thing, and circumstances of where the girl said it happened, and all that. But he certainly had his. He
was a Rolling Stone.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the Babe was popular. I mean, he was the most popular man in America.
This business with Lou Gehrig's wife, we don't want to get into that. Was that?
Well, you're probably thinking of when when Gehrig on his honeymoon was missing his wife, and he was in a ship cabin with Babe Ruth and Babe Ruth's wife, right? And drinking, and Gehrig didn't really drink, and he was furious because Gehrig had told the ship's captain. They had a full alert going on. And for, I don't know how long it was, a half hour, an hour, they were looking overboard for his wife. And then all of a sudden they found her partying with Babe Ruth.
Right.
But Babe's wife was there, Claire, the second wife. And so
she's the mother of these three?
She's the grandmother of Tom Stevens.
Okay.
And Julia is her daughter. And by the way, she dated Ty Cobb before she dated
Wow.
Babe Ruth when she was a young woman. She was very attractive, and she was from her. I think her uncle was Ty Cobb's lawyer and stuff. So,
Now, Ty was a piece of work, right? As far as
as a ball
a
player,
real-
nobody liked Ty Cobb. And he
Was a
he had a
person,
lot of
too.
redeeming factors, though.
Oh, he did?
Oh yeah, he was a very generous man.
Huh.
He was but not on the field. On the field, people hated him, but he could hit
Oh, yeah.
and he could run. But it kind of started, because he has that history about that odd history of the way his mother shot his father.
Ooh,
You
didn't
know?
know that.
Yeah, like blew his head off or something. Is the
Well,
rumor?
that'll affect you.
Yeah, he was sneaking in a window of his own house. He was a judge. I mean, I don't know these details perfectly, but it's something very similar to this. Cobb's father was a judge, a circuit judge, when they really did a circuit. And for some reason, he came back, and evidently, his wife was in the house with another man in the bedroom. So he's coming in the window. I don't think he suspected anything, but I'm not sure about that. And I think what it was is when he came in the window, she blew his head off with a shotgun or something. That's surely an embellishment, but he shot him in the head.
How old was Ty?
But everybody check me on those facts because I'm not a Cobb expert.
Uh-huh. Babe, you have. Ty's a little...
Yeah, Babe, I
Babe,
kind of
you
know
know.
pretty well nowadays,
Well, let's go back to Babe. I think one of the things that we struck up a rapport was when I told you I was taught by the Zavarian brothers. And it was a Zavarian brother Matthias, who founded the Babe or told the Babe he had the goods.
Yeah.
Was that
Yeah.
at St. Mary's?
Yeah. Babe was heartbroken going to St. Mary's
Was like
industrial school.
reform school, wasn't it?
It
Sort of?
was like a reform school,
Those
but it was
brothers.
Yeah, it was a mix. Babe was under the category of incorrigible. They had orphans, incorrigibles, and what else? Now, Babe wasn't a bad kid, but he was a mischievous truant. And he was just about to start school then, and he might have just started school then a couple times, but he didn't like to attend school. Like, he didn't show up. So they knew at a very young age the father did it, and the father wasn't getting along with the mother. That's a whole other
Well, his
story.
father had a bar, right?
The father had a bar, yeah. And the father, like a lot of people think he came from a poor family. Well, he grew up on the waterfront, but his father and his uncle and his grandfather on the Ruth side and the Schamberger side, they were prominent in their class. They had successful businesses, but Babe, so they paid like $15 a month to put him in St. Mary's, but it was only 2 miles away. The real problem is both the father and the mother worked at the bar. And the bar, in those days, remember, bars would open like at 6 a.m. and close at 6 a.m.
5 a.m.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was like go around the clock, and Babe, was basically the only kid. He had a younger sister who lived, but there's debate of how many brothers and sisters he had that died, but let's say 4 or 5 young. So they weren't able to handle him. Well, and as you could see, the way he grew up, he would be something to handle because he was constant energy. So
So was that, did he go grammar school, high school? What was it at St. Mary's? Was that a...
St. Mary's, he was there from what would be called elementary. His first years really in school through really past high school because he didn't leave until, he thought he was 19 or 18, but he was really 17 or 18. They had the wrong year on his birth certificate. And that was interesting, too, because of, his father was Lutheran, and his mother was Catholic. And the father didn't want him baptized as a Catholic. So she snuck him off and baptized, which is a big thing in those days that, a lot of Catholics believe you had to baptize someone Catholic or else they didn't go to heaven.
Oh, yeah.
So she never told the father, evidently. So she went to a church. I don't think she was a parishioner, but it wasn't far from where the museum is now, where he was born. And that's not where he lived, but he lived very close to there. But the St. Mary's didn't know he wasn't baptized, so they rebaptized him. So he has actually 2 baptisms in the Catholic Church.
Wow.
Years apart.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did Matthias hook him up with the tryout, or how did he get from St. Mary's to where did he go?
Well, he went to St. Mary's, and they had an incredible baseball league. Hundreds and hundreds of kids, dozens and dozens of teams in every age group. And so they were good. And Matthias was a powerhouse. This guy was like 6'7", and he used to take a fungo bat, and he would hit the ball like over a 350-foot fence. Now, that doesn't sound like a great deal these days, but even that's hard with a fungo bat today. But it was really hard in those days because they had what they called mush balls. You would play with the same ball for multiple games. It get soggy, it get wet. Especially at a school like that, couldn't afford the best equipment. So Ruth was like, wow, and that's what turned him on to doing it. And that coupled with Matthias was a super good man. I mean, he was as strong as he was. He was the kind of leader. He was the head of discipline for the school, but nobody messed with him because he was so big. And he didn't have to yell. He didn't have to use corporal punishment or anything like that. They knew, just don't mess with Brother Matthias. When he spoke, or even looked. They said he would look, and they'd know, and they knew he was a good guy. He wasn't doing it. Some people, get abusive with power. He wasn't like that. He was the opposite of that.
Now, was he the one that hit the ball so high that Babe stopped the swing so that he could swing and loft it up?
Yes.
I heard that somewhere.
And then Ruth also did that so that he didn't hurt his schoolmates.
Oh, he didn't want
because
to
he hit so
drive?
hard. Yeah, he didn't want to hit line drives. So he, the coupling of it, he realized, and no one hit like Matthias at that time. The only person who really hit that way, probably that I know of, was Shoeless Joe Jackson, with the arch and the free swing. They didn't bat that way. How it was. They'd choke up and they'd aim the bat. All the big hitters did that except for Shoeless Joe Jackson. If there was others, I don't know. And so Ruth would credit two people with his batting swing, and that would be Matthias as an early influence, and Shoeless Joe Jackson.
Really? Never heard of Shoeless Joe.
They were the only two. Ruth would put his last pinky over the end of the handle, right? No one did that. I mean, and that was so he could get the full length and a big, big swing. And that just wasn't done. But to do that, you have to have incredible reflexes. And he had that. His reflexes were absolutely off the charts. Like a lot of people think, well, he doesn't look that strong. Well, first of all, when he was young, he was strong. And he knew how to put his hips and his shoulders into a swing and his whole body. But his reflexes were incredible. Certain people can wait to the last second, like Aaron was that way too, right? And still hit the ball, but most people couldn't. I know I couldn't. Even a lot of pros can't do that. They can't wait that long.
Well, now they're coming 100 miles an hour too. You better be ready.
They better be ready. Yeah. Now the ball comes faster. I don't think Babe Ruth loved fastballs. Like he always said, bring them the faster the better because the further they go when he hits them. Yeah. And most people can adjust to a fastball, but the sliders and things like that, would have been a change. There weren't many people throwing that, but they had the other junk pitchers, which were really hard to hit. The
spitball was legal, right?
The spitball was legal. The scuff balls, emery balls, sometimes they call them, and these other junk pitchers, and then all this kind of stuff they would put on the ball and stuff, and then the other thing was the ball. Even in the pros, the majors, they used the ball almost the whole game. Maybe 3 or 4 changes. So the ball got very dark. So it was very hard to see. And some people say that changed. There's a little debate over that. But some people say that the reason that changed, and it was the same year practically, is because Ray Chapman got hit in the head with the ball. You couldn't see it. That's right. And he died. So there was a campaign. Some people say it started a little earlier, but it caught on then. To bring clean balls in, but the owners hated that. The owners, in fact, if you hit a ball into a foul ball, or over the fence, they went and got it, and they made it, and you had to give it back. And in fact, Ruth, in World War I in Hot Springs, Arkansas, that's when he wanted to hit. because you can imagine Babe Ruth would not want to sit on the bench. They had 5 good pitchers on the Red Sox. They were one of the greatest teams that ever was. And so he had to wait like 4 or 5 games. He'd have to sit on the bench. Now, can you imagine having Babe Ruth sit on the bench, you know, with all that energy? He must have went nuts.
I drove them crazy.
And he must have drove them crazy
Put
too.
him in the game.
But then World War II and the Spanish flu came about. It started taking out players, the flu and World War I draft. So in Arkansas, they didn't have enough players to field the team. So, the team had to put him in. He was campaigning for years. But they had to put him in. And he played, in the field, and he played at first. And he really took advantage of it because his first game of note was against the Dodgers at Whittington Field in Hot Springs. And he hit that dang ball 570 feet. Now, people don't believe this, but it's known with precision where home plate was, and the body of water is in an alligator park, and they know exactly where that is. That hasn't been moved, supposedly. But even taking away, I've been there quite a bit, even taking away how far, let's say it didn't go into the alligator pond. If it went over the fence of the alligator thing, which is absolutely true, it's still over 500 feet. It's the first recorded ball over 500 feet. And then the next weekend, against the Dodgers again, he hits it further. He hits it further, not the same vector, but a little bit more towards center over what was called Swan Lake then. Some people call it Wagner Lake because he would fish in there sometimes, in between innings and stuff. But Honus Wagner.
Honus Wagner, yeah.
But and a lot of people got baptized in that lake too. Ah. Some people call it baptism lake. But anyway, so that was it. And then he went to a camp where the Army was north of Little Rock, and he just hit like 12 out. The reason I went to that story is because what did the Boston Red Sox take out of this and the manager? We're losing too many balls. Right? They wanted to make Ruth pay for the balls.
$10 a ball, right? Wasn't it? And back then, that's a lot of money.
I don't know if it was that much.
That was in the film. They said that.
Did they say it?
$10 a ball.
Well, that is a lot. Huh. I have a hard time believing that. I don't know about that.
It's in your documentary.
Well, I'm not responsible for that fact.
I'm teasing you.
I'm just one of the historians. I wasn't asked to research that fact.
That may not be true. What I just said.
Well, I can't imagine it is true. It was $10 then.
It caught my. I'm fairly. Well, it doesn't matter.
Unless it was $10 in today's money.
Oh, that could well be.
That could be. Which. I think it was probably more like that because $10 then that would be like $100 a ball, something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they wouldn't charge them that much.
Yeah, they wouldn't. No kid could play. No kid.
Even Ruth making, what do you make as peak? 100,000 or something? And
75, and but he made a lot more on endorsements and off season. Basically he made his money in endorsements, but Rupert. Jake Rupert, the owner of the Yankees, he was a tightwad, and but the other thing is, even if they paid Ruth, they were worried, and a lot of people think this is one of the reasons why Ruth wasn't hired as a manager. He always campaigned for the whole team to get paid well, and the owners did not have to do that then, so they did not do it. They owned those guys.
Literally.
Yeah, right. With the reserve clause and stuff. So these guys had nowhere to go except to quit. And even that was debatable, if you could quit without being sued, because you had a contract.
So how did the curse of the Red Sox, how did the Yankees, was it because of money? The Yankees didn't mind paying their players. The Red Sox did. Did Babe leave? Why'd they trade him? Why'd they get rid of him?
Why'd the Red Sox get rid of him? Well, he was so popular in Boston. With the
that
kids
makes sense.
and everything.
Get rid of him. No.
And he was pitching mostly, but he was starting to, beginning in 1918, starting to hit more and more, and then 19. But the owner, Frazee or Frazee, however it's pronounced by different people, he was from New York City. He was only like two very short blocks on Times Square away from Yankee headquarters, so he knew Rupert and those guys. And he was into show business. His life was show business. He bought Fenway, but Fenway was like it was an odd purchase for him, and he was losing money in 1918 because they shortened the season for World War One, and then 1919 they had a bad season, so he was now losing money, and he wanted all the profits to put into shows, right? And a lot of people will say the show was No No Nanette. But actually, that came a little bit longer. But there is a connection between the shows prior to that and No No Nanette. That was his interest. And then, so Rupert, every time Ruth would come to town and play at the Polo Grounds, he'd knock these balls like nobody ever seen. He'd knock them out of the Polo Grounds over the, a lot of times into the second deck and then sometimes out. And people never see anything like it. These were truly majestic home runs, you know? And people, so they would pack the stadium. So New York Yankees wanted him. Rupert wanted him. McGraw hated him, right? Because McGraw was he did the Baltimore chop kind of hitting, and he was a great strategist, but he was a rough, nasty kind of person, you know. And he was jealous of Ruth, you know. And so anyway, so Frazee got an offer from Rupert. A lot of people think it was a backroom kind of deal and a crooked deal, but he got a lot of money for Ruth. Because he not only got like 100 and something thousand, 125 or something, but he also got a guarantee he got money in exchange, on a mortgage for Fenway Park, something like $300,000, which is a ton of money then. So he came out of it good financially, and to him, Ruth was a headache, right? Ruth was like, he was just incredible. He was in his own world. There's nobody ever been like
now,
Ruth.
was he hitting then too for the Red Sox?
He was hitting by 1919, yeah.
Okay.
And he was hitting pretty much full time then.
But I still can't figure why would they want to get rid of it? Just money, I understand.
The money.
Yeah.
Cash.
Okay. Huh.
Just cash.
Yep.
Yeah, and then Frazee, probably didn't want to have the quote unquote headache of Ruth. Ruth he packed the stands in, people loved him, but he did not defer to these owners. Like everybody else was like, scared of these owners, almost everybody. Cobb wasn't too much either, but Ruth really didn't pay much attention to him because he was bigger than them. And they knew, so, and he was out in L.A. when it was decided that he was sold. And, Miller Huggins, the Yankee manager, he came out and told him on a golf course. He was golfing at the time. And Ruth didn't know, he probably knew, boy, I'll love to go to New York.
I'll bet.
But he also knew he was beloved in Boston. But he had no choice. He had to go.
Right. Well, it was the best thing happened to him, really.
Best thing that happened to him because that's where this day, yeah.
The house that Ruth built.
The house that Ruth built, yeah. And he was
they tore down.
Yeah. He became the most famous person in the country. He was most photographed.
What was the Hoover joke? They said, president only makes, he said, I had a better year than Hoover.
Yeah, and he was right.
And he was right.
Yeah.
The Depression.
Yeah. Yeah. He made a ton of money. And that was they were talking about his salary. Ruth on the side, God knows how much money he made because he would go to towns, for instance, and he gave a lot of it away. Sometimes at the racetrack, but mostly to charities and stuff, so in bars, but he was very, very charitable. This guy was like a real humanitarian, which is another reason he's beloved.
People loved him, yeah.
He would take care of people. A lot of times it didn't make like you always hear about him going to orphanages and hospitals and stuff like that. But they say people knew him that, and I've kind of confirmed this, that he for every time that was in the papers, there was 5 times when it wasn't.
Where he didn't.
And like for instance, he would often visit black orphanages and black hospitals, right? But the press wouldn't cover that. Ooh. Right? So, but he would do it. And, that's another reason he didn't get a management job is he thought blacks should be able to play. And he's the only person that brought a black person into the Yankee dugout, and that was Bill Robinson, Bojangles, who owned the New York Black Yankees.
Okay.
Right? But they didn't, that wasn't, I can't say that it was such different time, like because blacks in the South mostly, but up north too. It was a tough issue for these owners because if you couldn't bring it, you couldn't get a hotel room in the South if you traveled like St. Louis, and a lot of times in the North, same thing in the North, and you couldn't. You get protests, so it was an invitation to just all kinds of problems, and we all know that's a complex issue. But
Well, 47, right? It wasn't. I mean, think about that. That was our lifetime, 1947.
yeah. So it wasn't until 47, but Ruth played with all the best black ball players.
Huh.
Right? They loved him, and black fans loved him. He'd play. They'd make more in one game against Ruth than they would like most of the rest of the season, because the stadium would pack in.
Well, they did these barnstorming.
Barnstorming.
Where they go around and play 2 games, right?
Yeah. In fact, Mountain Landis, Tennessee Mountain Landis, the commissioner who was terrible to Ruth, and he's the guy who enforced the segregation of the game. He didn't want Ruth barnstorming. Everybody else could barnstorm. Ruth got suspended in. He got suspended in 22, and for barnstorming after the World Series, and that was unusual because most of the players would go around the country.
Right.
But he didn't want, because Ruth would play against the black ball players, the best. He played against Satchel Paige. He played against all these. I don't think he played against Gibson because Gibson was younger, but he played. He saw all those guys, and they, all around, Baltimore, Maryland too, and So
they singled him out. He was the only one they said couldn't barnstorm. Everybody else could, but
that's the only time they enforced it that I know of. Yeah, but then he won, and the next year it was waived because it was because it hurt baseball so much.
Yeah.
He got suspended, and he was out. It really upset the Yankees. Schedule success, and so it backfired on Landis. But Landis was just trying to make clear who's boss. Right. But he was also trying to stop the issue of integrated games.
Integration.
And so tough times, really tough times. But the black ball players loved Ruth.
Well, they were in your documentary down in Hot Springs. They were all there too. All the white leagues and the black leagues were doing their spring training together. I don't know if they played each other, but they were there. That's
right. They didn't play each other much, if at all. But they were there, and they were enforced. So that was the epicenter of spring training for the blacks. But also they play there year round. In fact, Hank Aaron even played the Negro League World Series there at Majestic Park, which is what I'm wearing now, right? And next week is the Babe Ruth World Series there. Those fields have been restored in the last 13, 14 years, and they're truly majestic now. It was called Majestic Field when Ruth was there. The Red Sox played there with him, and there's some old pictures of him. But now it's like it is the place to go.
One of your songs here, Majestic, it caught my eye, and I was wondering, and it's an instrumental, which I kind of like, but I'm going, Majestic, what is? And it was a hotel originally, right?
That's right. It was the Majestic Hotel.
Uh-huh.
And all the great ball players stayed there. The Sox were the greatest of them all. But they stayed there, and most people don't know what Hot Springs is, but they have mineral baths there. Before jacuzzis and pharmaceuticals and all these different things that would take away your pain and other medications, these hot spring baths were a big deal because you could go there, especially for rheumatism, that kind of thing. So because the ball players would have to walk 2 miles to the field and then back, that was part of and they go through hills. So they would, eventually that's why they called the field Majestic as well, because the Red Sox went from there to there.
Hey, you mentioned the museum up here. You're on that board?
No, I'm not on the board. No, but I know the board members, Mike Gibbons, Sean Hearn, and Tom Stevens and Brent Stevens I was with just last weekend.
Well, you said it's the 50th anniversary?
The 50th anniversary. Well, 50th anniversary was a little while back. Last weekend was a presentation of a new book that's written, Out of the Mouth of Babe, and by this lady named Kelly Bennett. She's wonderful. She's a famous children's author, usually illustrated books. This one is not an illustrated book for children. It's more for adults, and it has Babe Ruth's very unique quotes. You know, he had very unique quotes, and a lot of them are very, very savvy. You know, but you know, he'd had quotes like. I took two of them and put them in one of the songs. Don't let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
I use that as a chorus in one of those songs, right?
Now, you wrote a couple of these songs, right?
I wrote about half of them. I adapted, but you know, the first one is written by one of Babe Ruth's closest friends, Peter DeRose, and he's one of the greatest songwriters ever. He wrote Deep Purple, and his wife is the greatest ukulele player ever. She's the one that popularized the ukulele, May Sing Breen. And she was they used to be over each other's place on Riverside Drive in Manhattan all the time, and he would come down to Florida too. And then a couple other ones are, and then of course there's a couple adaptations of Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Yeah, I don't like Take It Out. I don't know why. I don't like that song.
Yeah.
I just don't like it.
Yeah, but it's so recognizable, you know. It's
I probably heard it too much.
Yeah.
But I like several of them. Well, hey, Tim, thank you very much. We're going to
Thank
wrap
you.
this up, and we're going to do a part 2, if you don't mind.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right.
That'd be great.
Thank
you so much. That was great.
That was
Thank you.
perfect. That was what we do. Thank you.
This is Chief Larry, and if you're enjoying J Scott and the Buzzy's Country Store podcast, please like, subscribe, and share. And as always, you're always welcomed here at Buzzy's.